So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to CIBC Presents Entrepreneurship 101. Just one minor administrative issue today. A number of you are logging on to the Vimeo record, and I just discovered this. You're posting questions and comments. I'm a little slow to pick up on these things. We will endeavor to actually track those very quickly. So that is a vehicle, it's a community vehicle in that if you post a question, then obviously any of your colleagues here can answer. I kind of reserve the right. I'll answer if I disagree or want to try and steer you in a different direction. So we are going to actually monitor that a little more closely than we have been doing, and really try and make that a very interactive opportunity to get a dialogue going and answer questions. Okay, so tonight's lecture on business models. I am really delighted to welcome a colleague of mine, Duval, who is the Vice President of Business Services at Mars. You know, it takes an event like this sometimes for you to get to know your colleagues. Don has been here 2.5 years, but I only actually sat down and read his bio today in order to make this introduction. And I discovered, to my surprise and delight, that Don's first degree was a bachelor's in environmental chemistry from Queen's. Now, many of you may know that the CEO of Mars, Ilse Zernick, is a chemist, as am I. And so it is generally accepted around here that chemists are exceptionally fine, intelligent people. So this explains why I have always been so impressed with Don's work. So Don went from that to get a master's in civil engineering at U of T. It's okay, it's still sort of within the family. And then he has moved more into consulting activities. He was part of a very successful service-oriented startup company, and has moved to Deloitte Consulting. He was a senior manager in the strategy and operations consulting group there. And he's worked with life sciences, healthcare, consumer business industries, and we were lucky to grab him to Mars. And at Mars, he's responsible for our business services activities, and that's advisory services, talent management, capital services, and our educational programs. And Don's the guy that I have to go to ask for support money for this program. So indeed, I am truly delighted to welcome him tonight, talking about business models. Don.
Hello. Thanks, Tony. Hi there. Can you hear me okay? Is it coming through the mic? Wonderful. So it's definitely big shoes to fill when our CEO and one of our other senior managers within Mars are both chemists, and I get looked upon to possibly fill those shoes. So interesting challenges that way. So judging by the audience tonight, first and foremost, welcome. And I'm assuming this is the audience that wants to figure out how to take their product or their service and make money out of it. That's the impetus behind today. So there's 3 key objectives that I want to achieve. First, I want to make sure that everyone appreciates the importance of clearly defining your business model. And we'll walk through some common definitions of a business model to make sure that we're all on the same page, and we'll introduce a few frameworks. Because you hear the term business model used all the time. What is it? What does it mean? What does it mean to my business? The second thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to present a very simple framework. I spent some time simplified model of, there it goes. Still there? Are we good? Okay. And then the last thing we want to do is I'm going to present a case study of the startup that I was involved with and present where we started from and how we evolved our business model with the changing market conditions to remain competitive in what we do. So as I mentioned last night, I spent some time trying to figure out, well, how do I introduce just the concept of a business model to this group? So I found 3 definitions that I wanted to read out to you. First of all, business model describes the rationale of how an organization creates, delivers, and captures value. And by value, essentially, make money. Okay, I kind of get that one. That one makes sense. What about a description of means and methods a firm employs to earn the revenue projected in its plans? It views the business as a system and answers the question, how are we going to make money? How are we going to survive? How are we going to grow sustainably? That one I like. I think that makes a lot of sense. But my personal favorite was the architect for the product, service, and information flows. I really have no idea what that means, and if someone caught me in the hallway and said, can you tell me what a business model is? And I said that, I think I would get a lot of confused people. But the question is, why is this important to talk about? Well, it's a simple and yet, I guess, an uncommon fact that a lot of people and a lot of companies, early stage and late stage, and I've worked a lot with both, even very intelligent people will assume that if you have an interesting product or an interesting service, you know what? It'll simply sell itself. Being an undergrad in chemistry and a master's in engineering, a lot of my fellow grad students that I worked with said, this is fascinating. Look what I have discovered in the lab. You know what? Any rational person would want to buy this. Common mistake. There's a lot of things that have to go into maybe thinking about how do you make money out of it. And essentially I'll ask one question. If you don't have a clear roadmap or a clear understanding of exactly what you have, you know what? You will have a great product, you will not necessarily have a great business. Simple as that. Take the ego, check it at the door. You have great research, you get a lot of accolades and a lot of kudos about something you might have done, an interesting application. If you don't know how you're going to make money out of it, it has a lot of value. It's an interesting or cool product. So why do business models matter? Well, I have 3 examples that I want to cite. The first one, has anyone ever heard the story of pets.com? Okay, a handful of you. This was a very short-lived online business that sold pet accessories and supplies direct to consumers over the internet. They were famous in the late 90s, early 2000 with their unnamed dog puppet mascot that was on CNN. It was interviewed on Good Morning America. It was all over. They had a business model that was quite simple. Direct-to-consumer sales of the product. Okay, online sales of pet accessories. So you can imagine all the things that might include. So okay, sounds kind of cool, late 90s. The baby boomer generation getting a lot of pets, migrating to the internet. Might not be a bad idea. Well, the one thing that they did have, they had an unbelievably successful marketing campaign. They had a top-notch ad during the Super Bowl. They had a campaign that just went viral everywhere. And again, a lot of it driven by this funny little mascot. But the interesting thing, they lost money on every sale of product that they made. And one might argue, though, and I would debate, that is not necessarily a bad thing if you're trying to get market traction and brand awareness. Maybe I'll take a loss to get that out there. But the reality is, that's not a sustainable plan. It's just simple as that. So, and what is cited as one of the greatest dot-com disasters, this company went public and less than a year later, total liquidation. It was then, I think the remaining assets and the domain name was since acquired by PetSmart for essentially a fire sale. Cool idea. Didn't do a lot of market research, fabulous advertising campaign, didn't have a business model that was going to enable sustained growth. Okay, I don't want to paint all doom and gloom, but just a warning for those in the online business area. One of my personal favorites, Twitter, free social networking site. I don't personally use a lot of social networking sites, but the interesting thing about this is they have a number of experiments, as they're dubbed, to try to figure out how they're going to make money. They make a little bit right now on ad revenue, but essentially they're kind of thinking about the different aspects or the different ways that they can actually make money out of something that has already raised $157 million of venture capital, only used a fraction of it. They don't have many costs. But look what's going to happen in 2009. Potentially 18 million users. 18 million users by the end of this year. And they're not really sure how they're actually going to make money. Is this going to be sustainable? I'm not sure. They're getting a ton of investment in it, but they haven't figured out their business model yet. They don't know how they're going to make this sustainable for growth. They have to, and they will, and they'll figure it out. Otherwise, they'll have a really nice, cool product that no one will be able to support because they're not going to have any money to exist. So that one was an unknown. The first one was a failure. This one I think is cool. This is a client I actually had a chance to work with, and I'll tell you, this is a well thought out business model. Now, that might come back to haunt me if Dell goes bankrupt tomorrow for whatever reason, but for now, and while you're in this audience, this is cool. Everyone knows what Dell does, but the two interesting things about their model is, A, they have a direct-to-consumer, and they also have something called JIT, or just-in-time inventory. Two really kind of cool concepts put together. But the interesting thing, with their clout and their power and their market, cap, and how far they are into people's brains when you think laptops, well, they have a lot of ability to get early access to the partner's innovative components and bring them together. Dell isn't an R&D shop. They're an assembly shop. They're an exceptionally good assembly shop, and they're an exceptionally good marketing group. But this is a business model that's well thought out. It's sustainable. It put a lot of the other competitors, when they hit the market, hit the ground running, a lot of their competitors instantly started fledgling, like, wow, okay, this is out of control. So 3 examples there that kind of give you some insight that, you know what, you can appreciate understanding your business model and how important it is for sustainable growth. So what I then opted to do is, okay, while searching through the definitions, I discovered, what is the framework that I can help communicate to you to say, how do you want to look at your businesses? How do you want to look at your companies? Where you're going tomorrow? Where are you going a year from now? So I found one that I grossly simplified for the purposes of tonight and has 4 components to it. Look at your business or your plan from an infrastructure perspective. What are your core strengths? What are your core assets? Who are your partners? These are the elements that you're going to need to take into account when you move forward. What is your offering? Is it a product? Is it a service? Is it added functionality? Do you have multiple products? Put it on paper so you can clearly see it. The part I'm most passionate about, who are your customers and how are you serving them? Do you want a transactional relationship with your customer, or do you want to build a partnership with your customer? Recurring sales, is that important? Or is it transactional? One-off, is it a high margin business? Low margin, high volume business? What does it look like? How do they pay you? What's your cash to cash? You need to think these things through to be very clear. And again, the litmus test that I use, if you're caught in the hallway and I said, tell me about who your customers are and how you serve them. If you don't have a good answer, then you know you haven't thought this through. And the piece that goes along the bottom that encapsulates all the elements of those 3 is the financial. These parts here are going to somehow be linked to revenue, and they're also going to have cost elements to them. You need to understand those. But the part right here is probably the most important. You can't look at these from a business model perspective individually. Yes, you build them and you get a good structure around each one, but when it comes down to it, if you don't have a clear understanding of all 4 of these, and you could picture not knowing one of the 4, you're going to have troubles realistically looking at me in the eye and say, yes, I have a very succinct business model that's going to be able to evolve. Okay, so as entrepreneurs, this is something that you will never, ever have the ability to say. Be clear on that. What I want to do is share with you the startup business that I was part of. Not only for you, but this is probably the first time that many of my colleagues will hear this story. How things went. And when I had the opportunity to do this lecture, one of the things that I really thought through was, did we actually go through an exercise like this? And I'm a bit of a pack rat, and I actually kept all my notes from the concept and inception all the way through to when I sold out my stake. And I was able to put things together to a reasonably good ability as to A, what we did in terms of analysis to say, what are we going to do? But most importantly, I was able to actually find out over an 18-month period how we evolved our business to actually stay relevant, stay competitive, and have sustainable growth. So I want to share that with you tonight. And the key objective of this, though, if you think of the 3 objectives I listed at the beginning, is to take these and hopefully you can apply them to what you're doing. So I'll give you a bit of a company snapshot. Founded in 2002 in Toronto. It was myself and a former partner from the consulting days. We were with a firm that encountered some financial difficulties, so it was kind of a push model, if you will, to become entrepreneurs because we didn't want to go to just a regular Joe job. So we said, you know what? Literally sitting around one night, we said, let's just try to do it on our own. And what we were going to do was not unlike what we were doing in our day-to-day consulting jobs before. Our mission was to offer strategic and tactical operations and supply chain solutions. That was the first thing it was written. Essentially, a two-person consulting shop. Arguably, not really a business at this point. And I'll go into a bit more detail as to how that migrated. We were pretty clear on who we wanted to have as our target customers. We focused on growth-oriented, distribution and product-oriented businesses greater than about $250 million. Pretty straightforward. The interesting thing about this time, which has some similarities to now, although I think things have dramatically improved over the last 6 months, is we picked a really tough time to say, hey, we're going to do this. We started in January '02. Well, they were still reeling over the tech bubble. Enron had happened not far, probably around September, October of 2001. So there was a huge loss in confidence in business consulting, if you will. And we were not far off of September 11th. So a bit of a tough situation. So the last element of the company snapshot, this is a bit of a summation, is that the company actually was acquired in 2007. The only reason I do acquired is I don't know the full details of how it happened because I sold out in 2005. I pursued other endeavors. So I can't give you too many details as to what the final price was. So using the model, this is the exercise that we went through. Okay, so from an infrastructure perspective, what did we have? Well, we had an exceptionally strong background in strategy and ops consulting. We had a very good understanding of the market, the competitors, and what our differentiation would be relative to them. We had relatively good connections. We already had what I call a warm customer pipeline. And depending on what business you're in, this is exceptionally important to kind of get the momentum and get a head start. We had a lot of contacts already that we would, if you were to ask me tomorrow, who are you going to call tomorrow? What customer, or potential customer for that matter, would you pick up the phone and call tomorrow? Well, we had a list of about 50 that we said would answer our call. That gave us a huge amount of momentum and excitement that, you know what, okay, I think we have something here from an internal infrastructure. But the other element, we did know we had some challenges. No one's really going to take us seriously. We didn't really have a formal name at this point. We did the whole marketing and branding exercise and spent arguably way too much money, but we ended up doing it anyway to appear more professional. But we did realize at the time that we would have challenges about doing anything large scale, and that was fine. But we do know that we had some strengths and weaknesses just internally from our infrastructure. From an offering perspective, well, as I mentioned, our product was consulting. And I know many of you here are on the technology side, and we're going to migrate to that because we ended up going down and developing a product, a software application. So kind of bear with me as I get through some of the boring part of this presentation. But it gives you a sense of when we first started out, we knew what we were good at, and we knew what we could sell, and we knew what we could sell well. The work that we focused on, again, what we did in our consulting days, sourcing, operational, strategy, network modeling. We had credibility and we could easily demonstrate that. Our product was short. We were in and out, 2 to 3 month projects, but we wanted to make sure when we get to the customer slide, we were in and out of that project, but we were not doing a transactional model in terms of our relationship with our customers. We really wanted to focus on models to minimize the time and cost of sales. Think about your businesses. How long is your sales cycle? Do you have, if you're selling through government, do you need approvals? Are there regulatory concerns? If it's an online business, you know what? Your time to market could be months. Okay, just clearly define what your product is. But this was something that we wanted to really ensure because the sales cycle in the business we were in was traditionally exceptionally long. And we did recognize our offering could only go so far because we were a two-person shop. But this is, again, I think the most important part of anyone's business. You need to understand who your customers are and how you are going to serve them. At day one when we started this, our customer acquisition strategy was driven almost entirely by our existing connections in our Rolodex. So once that was done, arguably, we didn't know where we were going to go. But that's how we started. One thing we strategically said, and I know some of you are probably doing this now, we made a very tactical decision on day one that we were not going to do any cold call sales. If we didn't have a warm introduction to somebody, we weren't going to do it. Because we figured the time and the investment to build that relationship on a cold call, you know what, the potential customer, they have relationships elsewhere, and we're going to have to try to impede. Well, you know what, that's interesting, and that is a solution that we would get to, but we don't have 12 months. So we got to figure out what clients or what potential customers are warm now and focus on them. The other thing is we had a motto. The first project sold to a client is not the last one. Again, it wasn't a transactional model. Our idea was to get in with the customer, do a 2 or 3 month project, but while we were there, we had a hall pass. We were working with one specific individual. We would literally roam the halls trying to meet other people. We were already there, why not? You know, why not expand our customers and within the same client, build relationships? And it worked exceptionally well. You know, you would actually stand strategically outside another senior executive or another senior decision maker, and when they walked out, you'd be like, hey, how's it going? That was actually a strategy that we had. So let me move on to the final piece, the financial component. Well, it was very simple project-based work, fixed fee, traditional consulting model. We were also very cautious of costs. We were a 2-person shop. At this point, in 2002, I actually lived in a basement of a house. I had a dirt floor, didn't have a door, and I paid $100 a month in rent. We could not get any equity financing, obviously, because what VC is going to finance this? There's no IP, the market's crowded, it's not going to happen. So we were able to secure close to about $90,000 on a line of credit, and we maxed out everything. So we were just making interest payments probably for the first 6 months. So managing costs was paramount, but our model was partnership building, so we had to take out people for dinner. We had to nurture the relationships. So it had a few up and down moments as to why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. Let's just make a product, make it transactional, low margin, and just push it. Well, I think that's harder. But this is what we were good at. And why? Because if you look at the whole thing, we knew what we were good at. We knew our product. We knew our customers. The financial piece will be tough, but we think we can make it work. So when you look at everything on an aggregate level, it kind of comes together and makes a fair bit of sense as to why we wanted to do it. So as I was going through my notes, I think these were the 4 questions that we asked ourselves about 12 months after we started. And these are questions I think are paramount for any early stage company to ask themselves. And you might be able to tweak the words or tweak the definitions. But I think answering these questions was the only reason that the company lasted until 2007. I sold out in 2005, to be honest with you, because my business partner and I, and I'm sure many of you are probably experiencing this if you've been in business with someone for probably 3 years. It's kind of seemingly the magic number. He wanted to go this way, I wanted to go this way. We had other staff at this point. I had to make a call. So I sold out my shares, very amicable relationship, still hang out with him quite a bit today, but just wasn't going where I wanted to go. But during that 3-year period that I was there, these are great questions. First one, how can we expedite and expand our presence in the marketplace? Build our brand, get recognition. The one thing that we were steadfast on was, is there a solution that we can develop for one customer that we can sell to others? A product, an iPod, like just something tangible that we can just sell to another. Because every project in the world of consulting is different. And I got to tell you, listening and trying to sell the same thing but tweaking it every time for a different client, well, that's the consulting model. We were thinking there has to be a better way. There has to be something more exciting. So that was one of our big mandates. How can we acquire more customers? We were a small 2-person shop. Our Rolodex was about this long. We needed it to be this long. And we really don't know how we're going to do that. And then lastly, is there anything more exciting in the world of revenue models that we can consider to really grow and expand and make this an exciting business? So we spent a fair bit of time on these questions, just trying to figure it out. And the key learning that came out of this is what we intended on doing the day that we said we were going to do this in January of 2002. As I said, 8 to 12 months later, we realized, okay, that's great, but is this going to be a simple lifestyle business? Is that all we want? Or do we actually want to make this something exciting? Take a company like Digital Cement, a marketing strategy firm started by actually one of our volunteer advisors at Mars, subsequently sold to Pitney Bowes. It started out as a little idea, and there was a conscious decision that they wanted to grow that and make it a large company. Easily could have made it a nice lifestyle business, making, I don't know, a couple $100K a year, which is a pretty good lifestyle, I would imagine. But no, that wasn't good enough. And we wanted to do that, but we recognized, well, we're not going to do it unless we start doing something fun and move it quickly. So, the next few slides here speak to the evolution. And I'll go through each question individually. So how do we expedite and expand our presence in the marketplace? Well, I'll do a contrast to how the business model evolved. Where we were, twosome, no distribution partners. Where we wanted to go ultimately landed us on having 2 distribution partners. And what's interesting and something for you to think about, these distribution partners, prior to us going to them, were direct competitors. So not only look at who your customers are, who are your competitors, and do you have something in your arsenal that can maybe piggyback onto what they're doing, that they might say, you know what, that's an interesting add-on. Do you have a customer list that they want to get access to? Can you do a joint sale? So we approached 2, what we thought were really strategically important competitors in the marketplace and said, hey, when you're going to a sale, you're not winning a lot here, so why don't we join you to tackle the customer together? That'll meet our mandate of actually getting our brand better out in the marketplace and getting some more cash and more deal flow. So over a course of a year, we did that. 2 distribution partners and landed a ton of business through that. And you know what's interesting about that? Cost of sale was almost negligible because they would just call us in. So we kind of had 2 customers at that point. Our distribution partners, and we also had our own line direct to customer. We had no business development role per se. Yes, we were all about sales. Probably spent more than 50% of my time on sales, 50% of my time on delivery. And we had all these connections, but we didn't do anything with them. If we went to someone and you weren't necessarily a potential customer that was going to buy off of us, sorry, didn't worry about it. No. We started nurturing relationships with people that we knew had connections into other markets. And we weren't selling them at that point. We were just building a friendship, building a relationship. And within about 6 months, 2 or 3 of the ones that, again, behind the scenes, you are strategically looking at who do you need to get connected with and why. Within a few months, we actually had some deal flow generated as a result of building these connectors. I imagine if any of these people that we did this with saw how we graded them in the back end in our kind of customer relationship management tool, would have been mortified. Like, met this person, don't call back for 6 months. Useless, waste of time. These ones, nurture, dinner, call them in 3 weeks. It was quite a model. But what it did is it said, okay, we're small, we need to figure that out. But beyond that, because we had generated a fair bit of cash flow in the first 12 months, probably close to $500,000, well, we said, you know what, time to expand. Yes, we're paying off our line of credit, but let's hire some people. So we brought in 2 new people. So now we figured, okay, our business model has evolved from just us, really no strategy in terms of leveraging our networks and a small team, to, okay, 2 distribution partners who, interestingly enough, were our competitors first. We now have a strategy to leverage building relationships with people that we just arguably were just connectors, and we've expanded our team. This is the one I really want to focus on, though. Leverage our offerings. Are there solutions that we wanted to, the question was, sorry, are there solutions that we develop for one customer that we can leverage for others? We were purely a service-based organization. I'm not going to deny it. At this point, a 4-person consulting shop. Wasn't really that exciting for me, and I wanted to do something that we could actually have a product. So one of the things that we noticed a lot of the work that we were doing for the clients involved building a model, building an application. And one of our most recent projects was working for a large retailer that you can liken to a Polo Ralph Lauren, if you will, or a Sport Check, or something along those lines. But we were in there, and during the engagement, they said, look, we'd really like to have this problem solved, traditional consulting. But how we solved it was actually building an application. And I got really excited because at the time, and my colleagues will be surprised with this, is I actually really enjoyed linear programming. Has anyone ever done linear programming or Visual Basic? I got jazzed at the opportunity to actually take something and build a software application. So, in the evenings, myself and one of the other colleagues actually developed a tool, a software application, that would enable, and this is not going to seem very sexy, but would enable companies, growth-oriented distribution and product businesses, to answer this question. If I'm expanding, either through same-store year-over-year growth or acquisition, and I have physical distribution centers in my network, A, how big do they need to be, and where do they need to be? Huge question. If you want to maintain some sort of level of service level, you need to really understand how big your distribution centers need to be, not right now, but 5 years from now, and make sure it's built to hold the capacity of the product. So I retreated, bought a few books, understood linear programming, and essentially developed a software application in about 4 months. We went through testing, we had it all packaged, looked great, made a lot of sense. It was at this point when I had my first real unique experience about being an entrepreneur. And I'll paint the scene for you because it's probably one of the more embarrassing moments of my life. My business partner was about 10 years older than me, well-versed, probably one of the most intelligent guys I had worked with. And whilst we were at the office, which was a part-converted family room in his house, to the dismay of his children and wife, that was our office, we had a phone call. We had a phone call from a US-based technology company that wanted to acquire us. We're a 4-person shop, but our product got recognized. Our technology application got recognition through the client that we had worked with. And word had percolated back, and so the phone rang. And my business partner is on the phone, and he's, yes, okay, yes, having the conversation. He's like, interesting. And he goes, and I'm sitting there kind of going, what's going on? What's going on? He goes, excuse me, can you hold on just one sec? And he puts the phone on hold, and he's like, it's such and such a company from the US. We've had correspondence with them before. They're actually want to move forward. Like, we'd had previous discussions, but he goes, they'd actually like to come to Toronto and have a discussion about acquiring us. And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. Pulls the phone back, takes it off hold, but I didn't realize that. So I'm standing right beside him. And I go, why on earth would anyone want to buy us? We don't have anything to sell. And he's like, he's on the phone. I thought he was still on hold. So sure enough, you have this awkward moment, and it's a bit of a pause. But this then became, okay, so what do we do? It hasn't really been tested. It's been used really on 1, maybe 2 customers, arguably. But we just finished doing this. So we were trying to figure out what to do, and in the end, the negotiations went on for about 3 or 4 months, and it wasn't a good deal at all. They were much larger than us. It was going to be of no benefit. So you know what? Didn't work out. Ironically enough, that's the company that subsequently came back in 2007 and did do the full acquisition. But from a business model perspective, now what do we do? We have a technology, a software application, and we have a service business. Do we license the technology? Do we sell the technology independent? Do we put it in a box, put it on a shelf, and do a transactional model? Maybe low margin, high volume, and try to push it. Why didn't we do that? There were other competitors in this place that would swallow us up. It just wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't fly. And there would be a perceived quality challenge if we tried to come in at a low cost. We knew that. We said, okay, so that's not going to work. So our business model transition was to go from a service-based industry to a company that had a technology and a service. I would highly recommend you look at what you're doing, and if you're developing a product, and you can't look me in the eye and say, you know what, I have differentiated IP, I know there's a large market opportunity, I have a strong management team, and I'm going to sell this product this way through these distribution channels. Think about a service element. Is there something more you can offer to your business model? Why? Well, look at what we did for the service model. All the things that we did to get customers, build our infrastructure, help support a technology solution that we didn't even have 3 or 4 months prior to all the work that we were doing. It was all working out. It's a really neat combined model. But the other really interesting thing is that we discovered that we had unrealized in-house technology skills. That was me. I had no confidence, and I don't know if anyone has gone through this, I had no confidence that everything I made would just be kind of unique, not unique, be kind of bland. So now we're like, well, wait a minute. Maybe we should build more of these, drive up our valuation, drive up our potential inroads with customers, and we keep on the service side. Wow, what a great match. That actually might be a cool business model. So we started going down this path, but we had so much traction with our one solution that we said, you know what? Let's just stick with this one for a while. And then shortly thereafterward, I opted to leave. But this is something, from a model perspective, that was kind of cool. How do we acquire more customers and maintain longer relationships? As I mentioned before, the transactional model was not in our best interest, not in our industry. Doesn't work out. So where we were, traditional fee for service. Either charge on an hourly basis, or we say, here's the work that we're going to do, 3 months, and then we're out. Well, I would say this is the precursor of the freemium model. Is anyone doing online businesses? Is anyone thinking on doing something like that? This proved, if you get it right, proved to be exceptionally successful for us. We didn't even really have a website at this point. But what we wanted to do with our customers is give them something for free to build the relationship, get them hooked. Not unlike you're doing, I think it's a great strategy, and then have supplemental services that are kind of premium, if you will, that'll get them to come back. I like the model. But our investment in the relationship with a potential customer was, we'll come on site free for 2 weeks. We'll come on site free for 2 weeks and do an assessment of work that you think might be important to you. Because a lot of time in our business, the customers didn't know exactly what they wanted, but they had a need to fix something. But they didn't know what the product or the solution looked like. So, we would go in and say, well, let's do something for free, the freemium model. But while we were there, had the hall pass, was always in sales mode. The reason that we did the free assessment was not only to build a relationship with a client, but it was to meet other people and get referrals to other customers. So if you can apply that methodology to whatever you're doing and whatever it looks like, I think it's a great idea. Again, I'm imparting what worked for us. It may not work exactly for you. But once we introduced this, A, it was a differentiation in the marketplace, but B, the amount of connections and things that we made, we could barely keep up. And that kind of speaks to the last point as well. When we were in at a client site on this 2-week free thing, it was a loss leader, investment in a relationship, but it was purely designed to leverage the fact that we had a hall pass in this organization. So this is where it got a little bit complex. Now we have a software application, and we have a arguably fairly profitable consulting division. So is there anything interesting that we can do from a revenue model perspective? Well, all the elements I've been speaking to already talk about all the creative things that we've done to enhance our revenue. But we still debated, should we license the technology? Some of our competitors might benefit from this. So we actually had negotiations with some of our distribution partners saying, you know what? We actually do want a transactional relationship with you, just for a little bit. This technology will make your business better, but we don't want you to own it. We want to control it. You can license it from us. And we had a couple hits doing that. And again, I had no idea if that was the right decision or not. But the fact remained, the reason I wanted to have that license model, as silly as this sounds, when you migrated to the transactional relationship, there was really no support. I wanted them to stay in touch with me as their supplier, so I could go there, build more relationships, get a hall pass. If it was a licensing deal, it was almost like a membership card. That was the only rationale why we did that. So, why do business models matter? What I've walked you through were the 4 key questions that we had, where we were, and where we evolved over about an 18-month period. Pretty dramatic. Over that time, we doubled our size, grew our team from 2 to 4. We added distribution partners who, ironically enough, were our competitors. We grew our business, which started out as something I don't even really call a business. 2 people consulting. Those are single shingle guys just out there, earning a buck. Not really a business, even if they have a fancy marketing campaign, which we ultimately did. But where it got interesting is when we had a technology, an actual tangible solution, a software application, and we said, what do we want to do with it? We added a service. We kind of reversed it sometimes when we would talk to people. We looked at a licensing model and a transactional piece. We did the freemium model before the word freemium was cool. It made sense. The reason that we did this is we knew we could not sustainably grow and be competitive if we stayed as we were. It wouldn't work. Why? Because there was a huge plethora of other people doing what we were going to be doing. We were able to do a competitive landscape and say, we're different for a whole suite of reasons. It's our new business model. And where the company ended up being in 2007 was entirely different than where it is now. Where it was then. You have to evolve. You got to look at the changing conditions. You got to look at your infrastructure. If your talent changes, well, your business model changes. You can't deliver on a lot of these things. If your products start to change, well, that's going to impact who your customers are and how you sell. And then all the components along the bottom and the financial, it's going to impact how you generate revenue, your creative revenue models. Your costs might skyrocket if you want to do something. If you don't look at all 4 pieces together, I don't think you're going to make an informed decision. And ultimately what you might have, as I said at the beginning, a really cool product or service, but it won't be a sustainable business. So what? Well, my favorite line here, and I don't remember the exact numbers unfortunately, but we got close to the millions, the million 5 or something like that when all was said and done after about 24 months, I believe. But what we did by evolving our business model is we increased our sales funnel by 300%. And when I say funnel, if I were to ask you tomorrow, who are the 10 customers you're going to call? I'd say just 10. I'll tell you the 50. We maintain a list diligently that if we ever got caught in a hallway and we wanted to demonstrate that we knew what we were talking about just amongst us internally, we made sure that we had that rehearsed. So our sales funnel was our key to our success. And we grew that by 300%. We grew our revenues pretty significantly over a short period of time. And what's more interesting is I don't want to call it profit because we kept investing the money back in, but we had free cash flow after you paid our salaries of about 400%. Pretty significant over 24 months. We would not have been able to do this if we didn't explore those other opportunities. And the trend continued. Again, I don't know what the final numbers were in 07, but I probably should have stuck around, but oh well. So I just want to summarize a few things here as we close out before I take some questions. I go back to the 3 objectives of this evening's lecture. Appreciate the importance of clearly defining your business model. Use that framework if you'd like. But you need to look smart and be exceptionally confident about your business. If you don't understand your business model, how can you improve it? How can you evolve it? If I say, what are you doing today tell me about your core assets, your core strengths. Okay, define your product. Who are your customers? How are you selling to them? Talk to me about your revenue and cost structure. If you can't do that now, or at least have a good sense as you grow your business as to what that looks like, it's going to be a tough situation. Because I guarantee you, when you put it all together, you say, hey, here's our customer strategy, here's what we want to do, but you don't have the infrastructure to deliver, well, something's got to give in order to build that roadmap to get there. And in doing that, putting all those pieces together, you can clearly articulate your competitive advantage. And the thing that I think really makes it helpful is you can explain, especially if asked by a venture capitalist or an angel investor, which I'm assuming some of you will need, especially in the technology space, they'll look at your model and say, you know what, this looks a lot like pets.com. Looks a lot like it. This is an online business, you're going to sell something. Maybe you just have a product. Tell me what's different about your strategy, your business model compared to theirs. I would argue you have somewhere between 5 and 7 seconds to convince them that you do have a differentiation. And they might say, well, who is it? Is it your target market or is it your product? What core assets in your management team do you have that they didn't? Let me see your financial cash flows. If you can't do that, You get one shot. You get one shot in those meetings, and you got to be very clear as to what your structure is. And I'll emphasize this point again, and not to belabor it, but once you've drafted all the elements in each of those 4 categories, make sure it fits together. Build the map. Understanding the components of the business model framework. I think I've touched upon these before, but again, not to belabor it, knowing the infrastructure, knowing the offering, knowing the customer, knowing the financial aspects, imperative. This is only one model. If you have a lot of free time and want to do some light reading tonight, just go into Google, type in business model online business. Get a couple of cans of pop and you'll be up all night reading. It is unbelievable the amount of information they have on this. You can get insights into your proposed business model, how you're going to make money. Like, would anyone actually think to have a distribution partner that's a competitor? Is it good? Is it bad? Are you thinking about a freemium model? Look it up. You can figure it out. This is just one strategy to make sure you don't forget the core elements of it. You need to have the pieces broken down but look together at the aggregate. And the last objective of this lecture tonight was to share with you my experiences of doing a startup. I debate that it's a technology startup. Some of my more pessimistic colleagues say it never really got off the ground more than a consulting shop, but we generated money from our technology, so I will stay true to that. But taking these components out, thinking about what you're trying to do, you know what? That's how we learned. We looked at a lot of other models and said, what's worked for them and what hasn't? So, not bad for a shabby chemist. If anyone has any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them. I think there's a couple of microphones set up. And if it's highly technical, online business, Twitter sphere type questions, I might struggle. And or if it's something directly related to a social purpose business, I might ask one of my colleagues to join me on the stage. I don't know if the microphone's on. No, we're getting it on momentarily here.
Do you need to do something?
Oh, there you go.
Okay. I have a question about building relationships. So let's say you wander in a hallway and you bump into a VP of operations. What steps do you go through to build a relationship with that person? Do you take them for lunch and talk about business? Do you give them game tickets? What do you do?
Well, the first thing you don't do on the thing you don't do on the first encounter is start selling. Hey, here's my business card, here's our service offerings, and assume that they're going to be impressed that you have such a great business. We went through, again, there's a lot of research on the sales cycle and building partnerships with someone to sell into. Again, I could speak to it, but it's freely available anywhere. We would actually have conversations, introduce ourselves, and strategically make small talk. Next one would be going for coffee or going for dinner. And it was probably the 3rd or 4th dinner, if they hadn't inquired, that we overtly would start talking about our offerings and the work that we're doing internally in the other divisions and build that relationship. But the key thing we did not do is business card, here's our brochure, you know what, you should call us, you know what, we're doing you a favor. No, it was almost like a marriage. It's almost like courting. It's like dating for the first few dates. You don't want to push too fast, but you just want to make sure you're there and build that relationship slowly but surely. Yep.
Do you think there is enough of a science as opposed to just an art in building a business model to be able to differentiate between best practices and a systematic approach to actually building a model? In the sense that, would it make sense to create a black box whereby following a set of objectives and initial conditions, it would actually output the perfect business model for your company in that industry?
Well, yeah, if I understand the question correctly, you're going to learn as you go. So when you first start out, if it's a bit of an ambiguous black box, and if I'm off, please re-emphasize your question. But when you first start out, it is going to be a bit of a black box. And you're going to learn and you're going to evolve and things are going to come together. But the one thing I fundamentally believe is that spending time getting educated, getting practical, getting logical, and getting smart, all those elements about your business model far exceeds the cool factor of being creative. You can say, I got something kind of cool, you don't really need to structure it, I know it's going to work. You know what, you fall into that category of, hey, I have a cool product, I don't understand why everyone just won't buy it. That's creativity. That's innovation. That's wonderful. That's not commercialization and business success. So if you recognize that and say, hey, it's a little blurry right now, but I'm the creative one of the company, and that's fine, but it needs to migrate to, okay, now we actually got to think this through, take the black box off, make sure we understand these 4 components, if you will, and that to me would be the key enabler to be successful, because that only can last so long.
So do you think it's an art or science? Do you think it's completely subjective in a matter of creativity and educated creativity?
I liken the art to mean the creativity, so I would actually say there's more of a scientific approach to it. I think there's enough research out there that you can do that would far exceed the value of it being an art. I firmly believe that.
Okay.
I've worked with a lot of creative people, and again, if I'm likening your art versus science to creative versus practical, I don't know if that's the right measure, but that's how I liken it. I would say that the artists are the ones with the cool products, cool technologies, but the science are the ones that say, I know actually how to make a business out of it. And we could debate that one, but that's just my personal opinion.
Thanks.
Thanks.
First of all, thank you very much for a great presentation. And I just have a question about one point in your presentation that you talk about joining forces with your potential competitor to increase the success of your business. But can you talk about some risk? Like you're a startup company, then they might take away your customer or your technology, or they might, get the concept and stuff like that.
Practically speaking, we didn't think it through very well at the beginning. The contracts that we ended up signing precluded us from developing long-term relationships with select clients that they introduced us to. And what would happen is, at least 2 occasions in the US, we spent a fair bit of our time there, we would be introduced to a client through a distribution partner. In return, we could never solicit and or work for that business partner without them taking a cut. So it got to be a bit of a challenge when the client said, hey, this is great, you guys are doing great work, can we not, it's almost like you work for a temp agency. You can't circumvent the agency that brought you into that deal flow. So that was one challenge that we did not think through very well. We couldn't build the relationship and nurture the relationship on their own. But the fact of the matter is the amount that they took off from the total billings that we had to that client, it was still worth it. It was still a very positive revenue generating component. At a macro level, I'm not saying that you necessarily want to go after a competitor. You might want to look more at a partner. And you can call them what they become a partner, if you will. But we looked very closely at what gaps that our distribution partners, the 2 that we ended up on, what gaps they had and where we would fit in. And the negotiations and the contractual component, again, we could have gotten a little smarter on that, on the details of the contract. But those negotiations, maybe 3 weeks from sit down to signed, which in our opinion was very, very fast. So the only risk that we had was how you maintain the relationship with the customer once you've been connected through your distribution partner. That was the main risk that we had that I definitely would have thought through a bit more.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries.
Hi, one of the things I'm struggling with is how do I figure out the financial revenues of a product that has a significant social benefit?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
A product that has a significant social benefit.
Yeah, so
I'm having a hard time figuring out how to get the financial revenues from that, because I don't know how to make money when the benefit is to the society itself. And
can I ask if you've thought it through a bit more what the actual service and or product is?
it's a product, yeah.
Okay, so you're selling a product that has a price, or you're giving it away for free? Because if you're giving it away for free, I see a bit of a challenge in the business model.
Yeah.
Even if a product has a social benefit, the fact remains if you do want to operate it like a business, you need to look at all these components. There's going to be revenues and there's going to be costs. If you can give the product away for free, but you can make it for free, well then it works. Arguably, you can't do that.
No.
So, that almost is you can almost remove the fact that it has a social benefit. I think it's important, and I think you should value that, and you should, it's admirable that you're doing that. But the fact remains, if you want to operate it in a commercially successful environment, and I'm not even talking, it doesn't have to be a for-profit or a non-profit, that doesn't matter. When you look at that bottom line, the financial model, if you're developing a product that you want to give that has a social benefit, you need to figure it out. It could be a funding strategy. Maybe you don't sell the product. Maybe the revenue comes in from something else and you subsidize being able to distribute the product to that target market that you want to hit. Again, maybe you can do a consulting thing on the side and then push the product for free and subsidize it through those revenues. Okay. So I would explore, if the target customer that you have is one of a demographic that you want to help that can't afford it, then look for an alternative. Alternative could be funding, government grants, you never know, but also could be revenue from another stream to subsidize it. Check it out.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. Hopefully this was insightful. If there's any questions, I'll stick around for a few minutes. So,